Hi, everybody. Thank you. Welcome back. My guest today is someone that I ran into every Friday at the comedy store in the main room. We say hello, we see each other perform, but we never really got a chance to have a conversation. So I'm really excited about having her here. It's Alycia Cooper. She is comedian, actress, singer, dancer, DGA Emmy nominated director. I mean, this is pretty impressive. Hi.
Hello, Yakov. I'm just happy to be here.
I'm glad you came. I really appreciate it. And I just wanted to have a chat with you and explore something that just happened. And it's Dave Chappelle's special that came out.
Yes.
I didn't get a chance to see it yet, but you did.
Yes.
I read a bunch of reviews about it, and it's just fantastic. But before we would do that, I want the viewers to get to know you a little bit more.
Okay.
What made you want to do comedy?
You know what? I didn't even know that I wanted to do comedy. I grew up watching comics.
Hmm.
My cousin Karen moved in with us because she got kicked out for being a smart mouth,
Okay.
and she was a little older than me, and she watched every comedian ever. So I wanted to do everything my cousin did. So I watched every comedian ever, and loved everybody. Fell in love with you because of Karen.
Oh, thank you. That's
So it was just wonderful, just laughing and just it was just a great time. And comedy was even different. Everything you saw was clean.
yes, yes. It was three networks. That was it, and
Three
they would not
networks,
put you on.
standards
On
and
yeah,
practices, just
yeah.
controlled everything at that time.
Yes,
So all
yes,
you were exposed to was really clean comedy and good natured humor.
yes, yes,
So
yes.
then after college, HBO came out with Def Jam.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And so I got to see these comedians I had never been exposed to before, and they were able to say anything they
That's
wanted to
right.
say,
That's right.
and they did.
Yes.
And it was hilarious. Was exposed to Bernie Mac and people like that, and then I said, I've been told my whole life that I'm funny. I think I can do this. Did not know
Wow.
that comedy was an art form that you prepared for.
Well, it's
So
okay.
I
It's a
would,
learning curve.
I
Yeah.
jumped on stage with nothing prepared,
And
thinking that they were just riffing and talking off the top of their head. So I was like, I can do that. Crashed and burned
oh, I
like
can.
I should have. I was all dressed up.
Oh.
That was back when you would dress up to do stand up. I looked the part, didn't have a
Oh,
punchline in my head. So
oh.
then I started doing jokes that we heard on the school bus, repeating jokes.
And
And that didn't work either because I
still
didn't have
didn't
any
work.
delivery.
Wow. Wow.
So I was like, maybe I'm not funny.
Oh.
So I stopped doing it because I tried it like 3 times, bombed 3 times. And I said, yeah, this isn't for me. So I went away and did other things, graduated from college. I decided I wanted to be a comedy writer. Just started working behind the
What
scenes.
was the first job?
My
On
first
a
job in
comedy
entertainment.
writer? No, comedy
Oh, my
writer.
first comedy writer's job. I had been a talk show producer, and then I wrote a spec script for Everybody Loves Raymond,
Oh,
and
wow.
got it into this program called the WGA trainee
Uh-huh.
writers trainee program, and got over there on a show called The Parkers, and I was in the writers room as a WGA trainee for 26 weeks with some of the tops in the business, and that's how I
Wow.
learned how to write for sitcoms.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Did that episode ever happen for Everybody Loves Raymond?
No, it was just a spec
Oh,
script.
spec script,
Yeah,
just
that
to
got me
show your
into just
yeah.
to show what I could do when
That's
I was
cool.
applying to programs.
That's awesome.
And
Good.
so it got me in somewhere. And that's the thing. You have to, whatever it is you're doing, you got to complete it so that people can see it and then decide whether or not they want it. So now I just moved over to filmmaking, and I wrote a half-hour film script, a short, a suspense thriller, and I shot it because you have to show people when you're trying to apply to programs. So one thing about life, you're gonna do the work and pay your dues in order to
That's
get the
right.
breaks.
There's no
There are
free
no
no free
shortcuts.
lunch.
No
Yes.
free
No,
lunch.
no, no. It reminds me when I came to America, I wanted to do stand up, but I didn't speak English.
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
was a comedian there,
Hmm.
and here is a little obstacle that I need to learn the language,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So I would do it in a bar. I was a bartender, and I would just tell jokes. And if I got tips, then I knew I was funny. If I didn't, I knew I have to work on the delivery. So I can relate to that. But I remember one time I was in Florida, and an agent gave me an opportunity to perform in this condominiums. Nobody wanted to go there, and they gave me $50, and they said, "You got to drive like an hour and a half." They said, "How much time do you got?" I said, "Well, I can probably do about 30 to 45 minutes." They said, "Good." So I go there, and the people there were in the walkers, God bless them, and they were just like a waiting room for God, and they were just sitting there, and they didn't really understand, and my English was not good enough. And I remember finishing this gig, and I thought, I'll never work in this business again, because now the word will spread that I can't. I said I can do half an hour, and I couldn't even do 5 minutes, really.
Mhm.
And I remember how emotional it was for me. But
Yeah.
then I picked myself up
Mhm.
and said, I gotta just work harder, and
Mhm.
that's what happened. So
Wow, and it
yeah,
paid off for
it
you.
paid off.
Yeah.
So what's the best gig? Like one of the people, I think you work with Chris Rock, and
Mhm.
there are some other entertainers. Was there anybody that stood out that was like really great to work with?
You mean as an actor, just as how they treated you?
Well, okay. Uh, let's say one. Let's say as an act.
As an act, you know what? I got to open for Paul Mooney and Dick
Uh
Gregory.
huh.
And it was just an education watching those guys take serious topics and make it hilarious.
Yes. Yes.
So
Paul.
that was, I
Paul.
mean, it's just you're in school,
Yes.
at that time. And I really paid close attention to what they were doing because these are serious
Yeah.
topics,
Yes. Yes.
and they
Yeah.
still they had
Yes.
punchlines
Yes. They
because that's
did.
what it's all about. Like,
And
even if you're going to tell a long story, you got to have jokes throughout,
that's true.
you know.
Otherwise, it's a
It's,
lecture, and
yeah, right.
nobody.
It's a
So
TED
people
talk.
fall asleep. Right. Exactly.
Right. So,
So, how was working with Chris Rock?
oh, it was great. It
Yeah.
was
Where
great.
did you?
Yeah.
What did you guys do?
I just opened for him at one of the big theaters. I think it was in New York.
Uh huh.
Yeah, so I was
That's
just an opener. I've opened for a few people once, and well, I got to open for Dave here in the Belly Room.
wow.
This is maybe a
Dave
year ago.
Chappelle.
Yeah,
Wow.
what happened was Dave had rented out the Belly Room on his own.
Okay.
And so I think he had like 2 or 3 nights in a row that he
Okay.
just, he had the back little VIP area and he had upstairs.
Uh
So
huh.
the first night I heard the grumblings. Oh, Dave was here. He's coming back tomorrow. And I said, really? I said, oh, I'm coming here early. So I went in the back of the VIP area and then Dave was already there. So I said, and I said, you can't be a sycophant. You can't bother people. So I came in and I did like this and I waved really quickly and I went over to the bar and ordered me a drink. I didn't bother him at all because everybody else was bothering him.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were
Yeah.
walking up, hugging him, and hey, and can I get a picture? And
Right.
da, da, da,
Right.
da, da.
Right. Right.
Because I was the only one in this whole room full of people who didn't bother him.
That's
He got
cool.
up and walked over to me.
No, that's
I know he was like,
awesome.
"Who is this chick that don't give a
Yeah.
damn about me?" So he stood beside me and we chatted it up and
Oh.
talked about mutual friends. I said, Dave, I would really love to open for you. He said, I wish I had known how to put you up tonight. So
Wow.
he said, talk to him. And it was a guy who was his right hand. And I said, he said he put me on the list for the next day.
Cool.
So I came back the next day. I mean, this room was crowded, like
Sure.
Stan
Sure.
Lathan, Busta Rhymes, like everybody was back in this room. And so I got to open for him the next night
That's
in
very
the belly
exciting.
room. So that was
That's
good. But Dave just cracks me up because Dave sits there and just smokes. I mean,
I.
I think he lights one cigarette with another cigarette. And so the whole room is just smoky. All of us dying of secondhand smoke, but we just excited. I got my cancer from Chappelle. Like, we just happy. You know, we don't care how we got that lump in our throat.
That
We
is.
just want to listen to Dave smashed in a hot box, encased in some nicotine. But just watching him is a lesson because he's just it's almost like watching a orchestra.
Yes.
It goes to a crescendo.
Yes.
It's just
Yes.
like when you're watching it because he
Yes.
knows exactly what he's doing. He knows how to bring you way down and then smack you.
Yeah.
And it's just it's an education. It's an
Yes,
education. So
and we're in the place at the
Mm.
comedy store
Yeah.
where this kind of stuff happens.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I remember I was also near the bar, and I see Chris Rock, and Dave Chappelle standing there. And I, kind of embarrassed to ask for a picture. And so I'm not doing anything. And,
Sorry,
and
my alarm went off.
it's okay. And so I'm kind of, wondering what should I do? What should I do? And Chris Rock comes over and says, "Can I take a picture with you?" And I'm like, who are you talking to me? And he said, "Yeah, I grew up watching you, and this is great." And Dave Chappelle jumps right in and said, "I want to be in the picture." It was like, wow,
Yeah,
this is I guess I left an impression
you
from those
did.
days,
You did.
Yeah.
You
So
did.
lucky, lucky. So now I am in that new place where I got my doctorate degree in psychology and global leadership.
Wow.
Yeah. So all of a sudden, after the graduation, which was May 18 this year,
Okay.
thank
Congratulations.
you, thank you. Everybody started asking me, "So what are you gonna do?" Right? And I'm going, "Well, I'm doing it." And but yet it kind of got into me. I'm going, maybe I can use the comedy and also use my understanding of psychology and leadership to help and figure out where is America right now, where America is
Mm,
going. So my conversation with you, I want to deep dive.
okay.
I want to deep dive to understand because I grew up in the former in the Soviet Union, right?
Right. Right.
So I was a comedian. I was censored by the Department of Jokes, which is not a joke. Every Minister of Culture had a Department of Humor and music and dance and whatever. And so we bureaucrats were deciding what we're going to say or not say. And so when I see political correctness kind of closing in on comedians and people who want to speak up, it scares me because it rings too much like my childhood or
Mm.
my adolescence. And so I wanted to talk to you about Dave Chappelle new special on Netflix. So
Yeah.
what you walked
Yeah.
in and you said that's great, and I
Yeah.
heard great reviews. So
Yeah.
tell me about what was amazing about
Well,
that.
the title of it is Sticks and Stones, and I talk about that in my act. I
Hmm.
say growing up in the 70s, we couldn't get offended by words because we were taught sticks and stones may break my bones, but words may never hurt me. So I'm like, I don't know why this new generation wasn't taught that. Because if you're crumbling over words, you're not going to make it in corporate America.
Right.
So I loved his special because he was politically incorrect. He said his opinion, and that's what comedy is that person's opinion. You don't have to agree with it. And just because you don't agree with it doesn't mean you need to try to cancel somebody's entire career. Just move over to a comic you like.
That's true. That's true.
Everybody's not going to enjoy everybody, and that's not even our goal. Is to make everybody enjoy it. We're trying to get our cluster that gets what we're doing, and we roll with
Absolutely.
them. If you don't
Absolutely.
like what we're doing, we would like you to like it, but if you don't, you don't. And Dave, that's his whole thing. He was just talking about unpopular topics,
Hmm.
but doing it his way. He said, Michael Jackson. He doesn't believe the guys in the HBO special. He didn't believe them, and he told his reasons why. And then the punchline was, "Well, what were those kids wearing at the time?" Things like that. So it's like, but the way he put it was so hilarious because everything was thought provoking. He talked about mass shootings.
Uh-huh.
And he said that they have these
Huh.
shooters drills. He has two kids in school. And he said he told his son, drop down low and run in a zigzag pattern. Don't you try to save nobody else. And he said, but what doesn't make sense is you're talking about mass shootings and doing these shooters drills in the school where the shooter is in the same school. So he's listening to the same drill. And he's like, excuse me, which way do we run again?
Hilarious.
So just stuff, it
It's
just makes you think.
it's amazing that you can find humor in this difficult time,
Yes.
in this difficult subjects,
Right.
and you can find it. That is fascinating.
And the majority of America has a sense of humor. It's that small cluster that has no sense of humor that wants to censor you.
Who are they? Let's figure that out.
Who are they?
No, but who is it? Colleges? Is it where does it start? Because it's growing, but it's hard to pinpoint where it's coming from.
But that's what I said. Like when they say you can't say a
Right,
certain word, like you
right,
can't say retard.
right,
Who was
right.
the person who started this? You know what I'm saying? Because you never find out. If that's the case, if everybody's going to be able to get offended by something,
You
we
can't
all can
speak.
get a word,
Yeah,
and then we're not going to be left with anything but and thee.
that's true. I
So let's not start this train rolling in the wrong direction because I can say I don't like the Milwaukee Bucks now
mhm.
that the NBA is predominantly black. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So it's like anybody can find something to be offended by. Enjoy yourself. It's comedy. If you don't agree with it, don't laugh and move on.
I
And that was Dave's whole point in Sticks
yeah,
and Stones. That he had
yes, it
some
makes
funny,
totally
funny, funny stuff. I mean, he's brilliant, because he doesn't just say it gratuitously. He's
yes,
making a point,
yes.
you
And
know.
in what was happening for me, as you were telling, I was visiting in Aspen a couple of friends, and they have a big house, and they have a dumb waiter, those things that. And so she said, "Let's put your luggage in the dumb waiter." And I said, Wait a minute. Can you, like, shouldn't you say, like, mentally challenged waiter? I mean, it's sinking in to me that I'm now cautious standing next to a piece of machinery that it might get offended,
Yeah.
and I remember when I was in the Soviet Union, we were brainwashed from with mother's milk. Don't say this. Don't do this. Don't draw a picture of Statue of Liberty because somebody will see it and they'll put us all away. I mean,
Mhm,
stuff like
mhm,
that was
mhm,
so ridiculous. But when you look at the history of that country,
mhm,
the actually word phrase political correctness started in Soviet Union in 1917, Vladimir Lenin
mhm,
came up with this phrase, and that was the party line.
mhm,
So if you say anything that
mhm,
was not directed to that politically correct, you could be arrested. You could be put in like work camps. You could be executed
mhm,
for something you say.
mhm,
So when I see things happening in the United States where a tweet can get you fired from a job, or something that you might have said, you don't get a trial,
mhm.
you know. And I remember when I came here, they said here in America people are innocent till you're proven guilty.
Mhm.
And in Russia, we were guilty till we were
And then, oh,
executed, right?
they-
So, so we were walking that fine line,
Right.
and it wasn't even during my childhood that it was. People were not being shot or whatever, but my parents remember all of that horror,
Right.
and it came with mother's milk, and so we
Mhm.
were like, okay, don't say anything, and that's why I left the Soviet Union, and I come here, and there's freedom. I still had that mental picture. I was on the beach somewhere and I was reading a book, Solzhenitsyn book, Gulag Archipelago, and someone passed behind me, and the shadow cast it over the book, and I closed the book because I was
Mm.
scared that somebody's gonna,
Mhm.
So all of those things happen in real life, and when I see that America is kind of uh, heading that direction, it
Right.
scares me. And
So when
that,
you see like the president like playing footsie with Putin over the his own national intelligence, I know you're thinking like, I don't know about that if that's the smartest thing to do.
it it's a part of it makes me, on one hand, it makes me wanna, I'm cheering for, like, Reagan and Gorbachev.
Right.
They got to laugh together and
Mhm.
they changed the world,
Mhm.
literally. I mean, the
Mhm.
Berlin Wall came down,
Mhm.
countries that were controlled by the Soviet Union became free. Today you can buy a Russian missile on the eBay. Okay, that's a big change.
Big
So
change.
on one hand, I do like when the leaders find the language,
Mm.
if it's in opposition to national security. Obviously, that's not right.
Right.
However, trying to find the connection humor is one of the best things that you can do.
True.
I remember, President Reagan sitting there, and I was doing a show for him, and then we were sitting, and he said to me, Yakov, how would you deal with Gorbachev? And I'm like going, am I the most qualified person to answer that question? And he said, you are, because you lived there for 26 years. None of us politicians live there. So I gave them my 10, 20 cents,
Mhm.
but they were looking for humor to find some kind of a joint ground that they could
Mhm.
communicate. And they did. And they
Mhm.
did.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so okay, let's talk about something that um, fascinates me. What do you think is toxic masculinity?
Oh my goodness! First of all, this country there's an attack on the alpha male going on right
Yeah,
now.
what's
It's
going?
like if
What?
you're an alpha male, they coming for you. Like I don't know what it is, but I think that's why some people gravitate towards Donald Trump. He goes back to a time where they look at it like the Archie Bunker era, where men will be men and all that stuff because it's like as soon as you do anything that's natural to being an alpha male, they try to beat you down.
Yes.
And then they call it toxic masculinity.
Right.
I don't even know what that means
Yeah,
exactly. Like
that's
is it masculinity? Is it? Feels like it's automatically toxic anytime you exercise any masculinity
makes
that's
sense.
natural to you.
Yeah.
So I don't understand why it's like we're trying to turn all of our boys into one way. Which is not
what?
good. It's
Not
not
good.
good. I don't agree that everything a man does should be boys will be boys. They've taken it
Right.
far. Like
Right.
if somebody rapes somebody, boys will be boys.
Right.
That's too far to the extreme. But I
Absolutely.
do think that there are certain things that are natural to a male's nature, and it
Right.
shouldn't be beaten out of him.
Right.
You
Right.
know, so
How did it start? What's your take on that?
I, you know, there's a whole lot of things going on in America. For instance, the whole you can't spank your children. I
Mm-hmm.
think all of that started. I think that's why we have mass shootings now because no one's spanking their children because they're being made to feel like a bad parent if they spank their children. Nobody's saying to abuse your children or
Right.
brutalize your
Right.
children,
Right.
but sometimes if they're not listening to you by time 4, you might need to pop that thigh.
Mm.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So it's like, and then some people make you feel bad for parenting the way you would parent your child,
Right.
as long as the child isn't being abused. I think all of this stuff started happening around the same time when other people got into the business of other parents' homes. So
Okay.
as soon
So
as
the
there was a
family.
train that
The,
started rolling once it got out of the track.
are you seeing that the nucleus family was in the 50s, 60s? I mean,
I'd say all the way to the 70s.
even the 70s.
Yeah, I think the 80s drugs started hitting really bad and it started
Uh-huh.
breaking families up.
Uh-huh.
The drug epidemics.
And
you
so
know.
and so in the African American community, white community, the same. You see that similar.
Well, now you can really see what happened with African American communities in the 80s was crack cocaine.
Okay.
What's happening now in the white communities is opioid abuse.
Mm.
So it's all still an addiction that should not be criminalized.
Mhm.
People that are addicts need to be helped.
Mhm.
So that whole, you're going to jail for 40 years, that's not helping families.
No,
What that's doing is that's keeping prisons paid and
that's
more
true.
jobs,
That's true.
and people employed, but it's
Right.
not helping the person that has the addiction.
Yeah.
So now it seems like they're trying to, because it's opioids, now they're trying to find a way not to criminalize it. But in the 70s, African Americans had more 2-parent households in the 70s than any other group.
I see.
Then by the 80s, when the crack cocaine epidemic hit, everything went haywire because, you can't take away the necessity of a father in the household.
Yes.
I don't care who you are. I don't care what group you come from. Having 2 parents is necessary because one of them can be the yin and the other one can be the yang. Sometimes the mother's tough and the dad isn't, but you need both of them.
Do you find that it's balancing itself out? The weaker the man become, the stronger the women have to become.
Have to become, yeah, because everything falls on you.
Right.
Everything falls on you. If everybody's weak, everything's gonna crumble.
Right. But it's kind of a vicious cycle because once she becomes really strong, he doesn't feel masculine.
Right.
And so he then starts taking opioids. I mean, look at
Or alcohol, yeah.
yeah. So when we look at a happiness report that's done by the United Nations, they're saying America is leading in three places: opioids,
Mm.
suicide, and obesity.
Mm.
So
That's terrible.
terrible. And those are the things that normally when you're unhappy,
Yeah, mental
what
health.
do? You start, you eat and you
Yeah.
become big, right?
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
you
yeah.
do drugs,
Yeah.
or you commit suicide,
Right.
basically. So
Yep.
it
All
tells
that
me,
goes to unhappiness. How are you trying to find your happiness? You're couching it in other ways. And see, also America used to have mental health facilities. You know, in DC it was called St. Elizabeth's, and New
Okay.
York City it was called Bellevue. Like
Okay.
everybody had their mental health. It'll be politically incorrect to say nowadays. They used to call them crazy houses.
Okay.
Everybody had theirs. Now
What do you call them now?
they don't exist now.
Oh.
They got rid of all of them.
So the people who are mentally challenged,
They're on Skid Row. They're out in the
they're
street. They're homeless.
wow.
They're being neglected.
Wow. And that just keeps growing.
And it just keeps growing. If you go downtown, you get unrecognizable.
Yeah.
So they closed the facilities because there probably wasn't any money in it.
Mm-hmm.
And they just abandoned the people with mental health issues. And then, like you said, other people aren't happy, so they're overeating, over drinking, over opioiding, over cocaining.
Yes.
And it's just, it all goes back to just not taking care of your mental well-being, mental health neglect.
Right.
You know,
Yes.
that's what it is. It's a sign of mental health neglect.
So when you look at our political landscape right now,
Mm-hmm.
and I've seen your act, so I I understand that neither Trump nor Bernie Sanders are your favorite.
Right.
I love your line. Tell your line about Bernie.
Oh, Bernie Sanders. I said Bernie's just getting kookier since the last election. You know, he's walking around saying stuff like, "Let the Boston bomber vote." I'm like, that's not in our top 40
Not
of
good,
issues,
not
Bernie.
good,
It's
yeah.
not, I said, I think Bernie died in the last election. They just taking him around from city to city, propping him up like Weekend at Bernie's, pulling a lever in his back, making him say crazy stuff like, "Let the Boston bomber vote."
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. And Trump, obviously.
You know what? I feel like a president, no matter who this president is, male or female, needs to be a uniter.
Yeah.
You know, you have to be able to stand in front of that pulpit, because that's the most powerful pulpit in the world, and say things that are going to keep people from listening to what you say and going and killing each other.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate. Okay, Dave Chappelle is uniter, or he creates controversy?
You know what? Comics aren't really. That's not our goal, to be a uniter. Our goal is to be thought provoking.
Okay.
And then you go away with whatever you got from it.
But the president, don't
the
you
president
think?
isn't a stand-up comic. The president is
Well,
supposed to be
it's a
somebody
question mark,
who's
yeah.
right. He's trying to be a stand-up comic. You can watch him and be like, this dude is trying to be Bob Hope, but he's not supposed to be trying to be Bob Hope.
But in terms of thought provoking,
Right.
I mean, you can't deny that this was most or a lot of the country was searching for, like you said, that masculine energy, perhaps.
And
I think
he definitely brought that.
Yeah, if you can only have two and say one is feminine, one is masculine,
You're gonna go with the masculine.
Hillary would have been masculine energy as well. Right. So, but when you have that imbalance, let's say if you look at the culture and you say, okay, so you have from the 70s or the 80s, we're being deteriorating in certain ways.
Yes.
And part of it, from my perspective, is that we stopped honoring that role of a mom and a wife, and we neglected that. So business, career, money became that
money
overwhelming, overwhelming desire, and there's so many unhappy families and so many divorces, and I think it has to do with some of this shift in our balance of
Hmm.
masculine and feminine
But
energy. What do
and
you think?
I also think it goes back to just capitalism.
Yes,
And capitalism run amok because when we were growing up, the average CEO made like 6 times more
right,
than their workers. Now
right,
the average CEO makes 600 times more than
right.
their workers. So when you've decimated the middle class, mama has to work.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? So back when it was time, remember Mrs. Maisel Day,
Mm-hmm,
marvelous
mm-hmm.
Mrs. Maisel, when it was the 50s, you could get gas for 30 cents a gallon.
Right,
The wife didn't have to work.
right.
Now everybody got to go to work. I mean, stuff has gotten so financially out of control. And when everybody's out of the home, everybody's not able to raise the children.
That's right.
The children, if you look at these kids nowadays, they're 1 year old with an iPhone in their face.
Yes.
They're being raised by
Yeah.
technology.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's like nobody's really raising these kids anymore. Everybody's so busy, so individually busy. Everybody's chasing the bag. Everybody's trying to get the next bigger house and the next expensive car, and nobody's paying these kids any attention.
I totally agree. And obviously, capitalism is not perfect.
No.
Uh, but when I look at contrast between Soviet Union and America, there's no doubt for a second in my mind that this is still a better system. We
Yes.
can have this conversation. We
Yeah.
can understand, okay, yes, we have homeless. Yes, we
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
no health care sufficient. We have other issues. Nobody's denying that.
Right. Right.
However, what worries me that today 61% of millennials are in favor of socialism.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
61%. Those
Mm-hmm.
are people who are going to vote,
Right.
right?
Right.
And they are not even closely understanding what they're playing with.
Right.
Because social programs, like everybody's saying, like in Canada or Norway, those are great. And healthcare is great, wonderful. But they're also paying, Canada pays 46% tax
Yeah.
across the board.
Yeah.
And when you listen to debates and you're seeing when the narrators are saying, "Are you going to raise taxes?" No one, not one of those candidates said, "Yes, I will raise taxes." But where would they get the money to pay for that medical care? So it's a question. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, so how do we make people see that this is still a good country? Just
Right.
needs some
Yeah, the
tweaking.
problem is greed. It's not necessarily just capitalism, it's greed because if you give all the tax breaks to the rich and they pay zero,
Hmm.
like a Jeff Bezos who's worth a bunch of billions of
Right,
dollars and he's
right,
paying no taxes, and then his workers have to go get food stamps,
right. It's not
there's a
fair.
problem.
It's not fair. And
There's a problem.
yeah, I agree.
You
But
know what I'm saying?
just because greed can happen
Yeah,
in socialism. I mean,
right.
when we had leaders who killed, I mean, millions of people who disagreed with them, this conversation would be both of us dead. Okay,
Right.
it's not happening, and
Right.
I want to make sure that it's
Mm,
not happening
yeah,
because what happens is when you say let's destroy capitalism, right?
right.
So you're cutting the branch you're sitting on.
Mm-hmm.
Now, tweaking it, it's like
Yeah.
having a Stradivarius and saying, oh, it's out of tune. Let's just throw it away.
Mm-hmm.
No, no,
Right.
no, no, no.
Right.
Get somebody to tune the thing,
Right.
and then you start playing it again.
Right.
So let's see. Let's look into the future, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So 5 years from now, what do
Mm-hmm.
you think? Who is the president? What's happening?
This is really I had I've been wrong the last couple times. In 2008, I didn't think Obama was gonna win,
Well,
and I certainly didn't think he'd win twice.
right.
In 2016, I didn't think Trump was gonna win. So now it's like my political dar is off, so I wouldn't even trust me. But I don't know what. I don't even for this next election. I don't have any idea who's going to win because I believe it depends on how many people leave their homes to vote. So many people
Well,
stayed home,
41% did not vote.
did not. They stayed
41%.
home, and Hillary still won with 3 million more. It was
Right.
that electoral
Right.
college
Right.
that's
Wh-
antiquated and was only in for to try to keep slave states in play. It's still a holdover from slavery.
Okay.
The electoral college, and if it wasn't for that, Hillary would have won. So what's wrong today with one person, one vote?
Well, I think that because the majority rules,
Hmm.
that's what happened in the Soviet Union. The founding fathers were looking for balance and saying if you have whole California, whole New York, right now they have this thing going on. I don't know if you've heard about this, but it's called National Popular Vote Affiliation. And what they're doing, they're collecting the votes from the states that are liberal, and they need to have 270 electoral votes to circumvent the Constitution and abandon, or it will go over it. Right now, they have 191 already collected, and it's been going on for a little while. But
Hmm.
I didn't know this. I'm
Yeah, I
sure
didn't know.
it's one of those things that my concern is when things are the founding fathers weren't dumb. That's why they created in my opinion, they created the system
Mm-hmm.
that could balance each other, because otherwise, the when the masses, it's mass mentality is what killed 6 million people during Lenin because they
Mm-hmm.
didn't agree with this system.
Right.
Then they killed 30 million during Stalin. Then
Right.
they killed 70 million during Mao Zedong. And why? Because it's a mass. When
Mm-hmm.
you have a mass and you don't have any opposition,
Mm-hmm.
God bless you, because all you need is to arm those people
Mm-hmm.
and they'll just destroy anything because you say, hey, whatever you get is yours. Go
Mm-hmm.
for it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And boy,
Good
this
point.
is going to be a mess. So,
Yeah.
my hope is to just keep the balance, keep the conversation going, because otherwise, we're going to have on our hands, we're going to have a problem.
Right. That's
What
true.
about candidates on the other side? What do
Mm-hmm.
you see? Anybody that you like?
For the Democrat side,
Yeah.
yeah, Elizabeth Warren.
Okay.
Because she has plans, she has salient ideas. She wanted to run last time,
Uh huh.
and she's got the energy, the fire in the belly, and she seems to be fair and balanced,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and I really like what she's had to say so far.
Good.
Joe Biden, Joe is just a little too old, not the old discrimination, but he's saying things that make you say, are all his faculties there? Love Joe, but his timeline is off historically, and he's saying stuff that's not making sense. And they said Reagan was in office with Alzheimer's, so it's been done before. But do we want to do it again? So it's like I like Joe, and Joe's been VP for 8 years, and he knows how to work across the aisle, and he knows policy. But if
But
his faculties are waning,
yeah.
then I'm looking at Elizabeth Warren as the next.
What do you think if John Stewart would run? What do you think?
John Stewart has made too many enemies because he's
Really?
so funny.
Yeah. You
I
think?
like John Stewart, but I'd have to hear his policies.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, it's a possibility. I don't think he's going to jump in the race
Well, what
this
about the
time.
one guy who said he's going to go up against Trump? What's the guy's name that said he's going to be the
Oh,
Republican on the ticket?
Republican guy. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
What's the guy's
Yeah.
name?
He's a talk
Joe
show.
Joe something. Joe
Yeah, talk
Walsh or
show
something.
host. Joe Walsh. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes, yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't see
Yeah.
how that can
Well,
happen. Yeah.
Donald Trump uses Twitter as a weapon.
Yes.
So all he's gonna do is come up with some name, Wacky Joe Walsh, something crazy, and the people are gonna eat it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I've never seen anybody use Twitter in this way.
I don't think it's ever been done like that. To run the country from your bathroom, it's
Sitting
not.
on the
Yeah,
toilet,
that's
type
right.
of covfefe
That's
at
right.
2 in
That's
the
right.
morning.
So in the American culture,
Um,
where do you think we have socialism? Do you see places where we have? I know we have Social Security,
yeah.
but that was a program that was established for
People
people.
who work and then put some of their money to
That's
the
right.
side. Yeah. I mean, I guess you would call it, the free lunches and the things that you can get in
Yes.
school,
Yes. What
but
about welfare?
welfare. Yep. Welfare. Yeah.
So this has been going on for a while,
A
right?
long time. But now it's not just the citizens getting welfare. If you're illegal, you can come over here and get a lot of services that are very expensive. If you can't afford to pay for a doctor, you can go to the ER, run that bill up, and it's going to funnel back down to the citizens. So it's a
Yeah.
very bad time financially because illegal immigration is a big, but it's been going on a long time. In the 80s, the Republicans had all these people coming over here for cheap labor. They were
Mm,
in their homes as
mm,
nannies and gardeners, and a lot of people lost their political careers when it came out.
mm.
So nobody was saying anything about it then because they wanted the cheap labor.
Right.
Now that it's
Right.
gotten out of control, it's ah
Right. Right. No, I get it. I
free
get
isn't
it.
always free, and cheap isn't
Yes.
always cheap.
Yes. And what I'm concerned about that the freedom that is something that the description of socialism is when the government owns all means of production. So
Mm,
everything that we had, factories, farms, everything was run by the government,
mm,
right?
mm, mm-hmm,
China, even though they allowed a certain amount of private industries,
mm-hmm,
but they have a communist party, someone there in the company, no matter what,
mm-hmm.
they can push the brakes and stop that
Right,
machine.
right,
So what happens in those societies that it's not just they own the facilities, they actually own people
right.
because they give people what I have two cousins that came here independently, couple of weeks here in America, and both of them said, "We don't want to stay here. It's too hard, too
Mm-hmm,
much responsibility. You
mm-hmm,
have to take responsibility for you, for your family." There,
mm-hmm,
they tell you
mm-hmm,
what you're gonna get.
mm-hmm,
You have two kinds of shoes.
mm-hmm.
It's brown shoes or what's wrong with brown shoes, right? That's it, right? And then you just make a living how you can do it.
Right.
And uh, so it's kind of slavery what
Mm,
happened in those socialist countries
right.
because they own everything
Mhm.
and you don't own anything. I didn't
Right, but
own
you have less responsibility.
right, right. You
Right.
do, but if you look at systems like on welfare here,
Yeah.
um, people also become used to it.
Yeah.
And it's a disabler, in my opinion, because if you have more kids, you
Yeah.
have more money coming from the government,
Yeah.
and it's more than you can make out there. So why?
Right, but but you have to be a certain type of person that want that because
Right.
you're relegated to a certain neighborhood that's not going to be a good neighborhood. It's a lot of times it might be crime riddled.
Oh,
The
absolutely.
school system might be so basically I feel like those people had kids for the welfare because
Mm.
you wouldn't want to raise your kid in these environments.
Wow. So
So
would you
right,
say that those projects, or what do are
yeah,
they
yeah,
kind of, to me, they remind me of socialist, even buildings are depressing, to
yeah,
look at them, and they all look
absolutely.
the same, and it's like
Oh,
dirty, and it's not good.
yeah, it's not
You
good.
where I'm going with that, I think it's important I would love for people who are listening to recognize, yes, this needs to be tweaked. There
Yeah.
is no question, and
Mm,
major
mm,
tweaks. I'm not saying that,
mm.
but
It's
if we
still one of the
stop
better
talking,
systems. Yeah.
because when Bernie goes and says, if the narrator was like, so what were you gonna do if you don't get that 1% of people to give you the money? So we go on the streets. We millions of us go on the streets, and then what happens? Nobody wants to imagine that these people who have great intentions
Mm-hmm.
will, once they're rejected and there is an opposition, which there will be,
Right.
it's a war, it's a civil war, and that's scary to me
It is scary.
because nobody wins.
But like you said, we've got to find better solutions, and maybe the politicians haven't come up with the ideas yet. But I know, yeah, I'm sure you've gone overseas and performed for the
Yes,
troops.
yes,
I've gone overseas. When I went to Saudi Arabia, I was
yes.
asking questions, and they said every time a woman has a baby in Saudi Arabia, she gets a check for $63,000
Wow.
just for having a baby.
Huh.
So
Because
it's
they
like,
want to have more people.
right there, it's an incentive to
Encour-
procreate,
encouragement.
encouragement.
Sex is not enough,
Just
right?
not
No.
over there
No.
when you all not over there. So, but I'm like, imagine if our government, instead of welfare and housing projects and tenements and all that, and what is it called? government cheese and food.
Right.
If they gave every mother $63,000 when she had a kid, and that was it.
Okay.
There's no welfare. That is your safety net. You take this $63,000 and you do what you can with it.
Well,
One time.
how long would that last? Let's be realistic.
Well, it's not going to last a whole lot long, but it will be better than you getting some apartment in some horrible neighborhood and cheese that is bad for your system and a horrible school system. Maybe you can take that $63 and start a small business.
That would be really great.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like, I think it would
Yeah.
encourage more entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
just a rundown apartment,
Yes. No,
it's not helping people pull themselves up in any way.
do you think that that system is designed in some ways intentionally? Because
Yeah.
from what I understand, there was like in after 1945, after people came back from war, men came back from war, but women were working, and
Mhm.
they proved that they can do a damn good job.
Right.
And so there was this realization on the government side saying, well, wait a minute, we can double the amount of taxpayers. That's pretty impressive. And
Mhm.
if we get women out of home, then we will put kids in schools, and then we can indoctrinate them the
Mhm.
way we want it.
Right, and we can pay women 70 cents every dollar we paying a man, so it's cheaper. The
Absolutely.
bottom line is cheaper.
During the war, they were giving them like 50 cents on the dollar.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So
So yeah, but I do think some of it is purposeful because in order for capitalism to work, there has to be people on the bottom so that there can be people on the top. That's the
but
only way the system will work effectively. You have to have the housekeeper to clean the house for the billionaire. So you're always going to have that segment that's on the bottom, which is why you shouldn't make them feel bad because they're necessary to keep the capitalism ball rolling.
well, yes, and obviously the change in technology and all of those things that
Mm,
happened
mm,
over the last decade uh, shipped jobs overseas.
right.
They were able to,
Yeah.
so that's something that we just need to adjust. But there
Mm,
was, in the past there was technical revolution or industrial revolution,
mm,
and we adjusted and survived. And I
right.
believe
Right.
that if the conversation keeps going, if we're talking and finding who is the right person to bring those good ideas
Mm-hmm.
to make people tweak this tune this wonderful Stradivarius
Yeah.
and make sure that it's still working for years to come.
Right.
So
But what we have to do though is we all have to work together. Like we're being pitted against each other right now. We have to fight against that. You
well,
know.
but let's talk about this because I'm sure Dave Chappelle addressed it. I'm going to watch this when I get home.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure he addressed it because if you look in the news, the media is all over. So most of them, it's liberal media, most of them, except Fox
Right.
News, and they're creating you can't find. You turn on ABC News, and it's all about somebody got murdered.
Mm,
Somebody is going to get. Somebody is hanging in jail.
mm.
Somebody. I mean, all of
All
this stuff,
negativity.
all negativity, and
Yeah.
it seemed like America is just coming apart,
Yeah.
and it's not. It's
Right.
still very strong. But
Right.
if they could have some responsibility on both
Ooh,
sides,
yeah. You know what? The news media has been responsible for a lot of horrendous stuff. I don't know if you saw When They See Us, the Ava DuVernay
Mm,
Netflix special about the Central Park Five, now called the Exonerated Five,
okay,
about those teenagers in Central Park, and they want a whole different side of the park where the rape of this white lady occurred at the south end. They were at the north end being kids. So the prosecutor changed all the facts to try to put them over there. They had no blood on them of the lady. The lady's head was completely bloody, And they were like, well, why is there no blood on these kids? Oh, because they raped her in the pelvis area. So, they just made all kinds of crazy. Most of the kids were virgins, but it didn't matter because they needed to pin something on somebody that night. What doesn't make sense is if you put the wrong people in jail, the real rapist is still out here. You're not helping.
Yes.
But these prosecutors want to get a win. So when you watch When They See Us and you watched how the news media covered it.
Yes.
Back then, laws changed after that because back then they would tell the story and they would say the boys, they never used the word alleged. So people listening to that are like, well, these are facts. The news media only gives you facts. Now they have to say the word alleged. They hadn't even been to trial yet.
Wow.
And the news media had convicted those 5 teenagers by using language that made the person listening think, oh, this is certain.
Right.
They didn't say alleged or allegedly.
And they accuse them. They're guilty till they're executed, basically.
Yeah. Oh, they lost all their childhoods, and they found the DNA of the real rapist. He was in jail, too, for more rapes.
Wow.
He had raped like 5 more women horribly,
Wow.
like leaving them for dead. He had done like several more, and he was in jail. So he bumped into one of the guys. He said, "You're still in here for that?" 16 years later, and the kid was like, "Yeah." And he said, "I did that." And so they tested his semen, and he was the rapist.
Wow.
So the news media played a big part in the demise of those 5.
Yeah.
And so it's all about ratings.
What about the whole Twitter and Facebook, all that cyberbullying happening? It seemed, again, this is becoming
The problem
way
with
of
that,
life.
the Twitters and the Instagrams, is people purposely make up fake profiles so they can say the most nasty, incendiary things. Then you have the bots and the Russians and everybody pretending to be somebody. They'll use a black avatar and they'll do certain things. The way you know that it's them is they'll say, "I'm black," and blah, 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 blah. That's not even how black people talk. So there's certain little codes they use in an office in Russia or wherever they are where they're sitting up here pretending to be people to stoke division.
Yeah.
And it's working. It worked in the last election. So we have to be smarter this time to know that there's people creating fake profiles just to start a fight in a chat room or start a fight on YouTube. And they'll say the nastiest things. You can tell when somebody's really trying to debate you and when somebody's really just trying to start some stuff.
Right.
Right. And that's the problem with Twitter and Instagram and everybody. They need to do, if you don't have a picture or you're using some weird name or your profile, you're just showing everything you say is just trying to be incendiary, they should delete your profile.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I choose not to be much on Twitter because I still have the flashbacks from people following me, and so here's millions of people following you. I'm like going, I don't know if I want to.
You're like, I moved to get away from
That's right. So
and celebrities are getting robbed because they're so busy on Instagram. I'm in Paris. They're like, good, well, your house is empty, and then they go rob it.
It's terrible. It's terrible. So when we're looking at this landscape, okay, and what would you, if you were the president, let's say Alycia Cooper runs
Cooper
and
2020.
wins. Yeah, they run and wins. What would be your and you had 3 main points that you wanted to create. What would they be?
The first main point would be to make the rich pay their fair share of taxes so that everything doesn't fall on the middle class.
Okay.
The middle class just can't keep it up. It's just, the wages have not risen.
So let's explore this for a second.
Okay.
The CEOs of the companies, like you said, used
like
to
the
make,
Amazons and all
they
that.
used to make
6 times more.
Yes, they used to, right?
Right.
Then Bill Clinton wanted to lower that and or to cap it at least. And so there was the resolution put together that they can't earn more than X amount. And so the companies that were trying to keep talented CEOs decided they're going to give them share of the company to avoid the ceiling.
Right.
And it went crazy.
Right. Yeah, they're buying $5,000 gold shower curtains.
Well, God bless them. But the point is, it's like, what is it that I want to become or be to help this situation. I
Right.
mean, yes, I can point out, and that's what happened in the Soviet Union. The czars,
Mm-hmm.
the czar was I mean, they were higher than 1%. I mean, they had palaces and all of that, and
Mm-hmm.
then they had people. There was very little middle class,
Mm-hmm.
and then they had this group of people who were starving after the First World War.
Mm-hmm.
So it was such a fertile ground
Mm-hmm.
for Lenin, who studied Karl Marx, and he said, "I'm going to organize this group."
Mm-hmm.
And then he went to Rockefellers and got the money for the weapons because the Rockefellers wanted to weaken Russia.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't care about the revolution. They didn't care about, communism, but they wanted oil from Russia. So it's money.
Right.
So they gave him
Right.
a bunch of money.
Right.
He armed the people, and
Mm-hmm.
then they killed the czar, and then they didn't know how to run the country.
Mm.
They didn't. It was so because they were like people who were poor and they just wanted to have a decent life,
Right.
right?
Right.
So who became the oligarch? Who became the rulers? Are they just very small elite of people, like 1% perhaps or less,
Mm-hmm.
that became the bosses? They killed all the people who were opposite, who knew how to run the country, how to make it wealthy, and then the country started starving. Literally, millions of people died from starvation. The
Mm-hmm.
place were so much. They used to feed the whole Europe, but they
Mm.
couldn't do it. They
Right.
just didn't have the skill.
Okay.
So what I'm seeing is there's this 1% with the golden showers or whatever, and it means totally different
I know,
things, right? Yeah, that's
Golden
that's not.
shower curtains.
Yeah, that curtains. Thank you. Sorry, my English. I apologize. But anyway, so we have that group of people,
Yeah.
but we can't. I think it would be a big mistake to make everybody the same,
Right.
because that's what I think is happening. We like in sexuality. Let's say women are saying, or the society said, you're the same as men.
Mm-hmm.
You can have as much sex as men can have without any commitment. Is
Mm.
that what's your take on that? Is that
Yeah,
true? Is that
I don't think it's true. First of all, women have estrogen, men have testosterone. We're biologically different. So I don't think that a woman's goal should be to compete on every level with a man.
But do
You
you
know,
see that
I
happening?
see that happening.
Big time.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
and it ruins the balance because
yeah,
Mother Nature
yeah,
gave men 10 times more
yeah,
testosterone than
yeah.
women
Right.
and gave women 10 times more estrogen than men
Absolutely.
for
For
a
a
reason.
reason. Right,
Exactly,
right,
exactly.
right.
So when this
Yeah,
political
yeah,
correctness
yeah,
gets into everybody's equal,
yeah,
everybody's the same,
right.
but you realize that the guys who run Amazon or Microsoft or Apple, they made. Yes, they might be greedy at this moment, and we might need to remind them. And
Yes.
believe me, they're being reminded of
But
that.
but that's why I think that minimum wage should be on a sliding scale.
Okay,
See, that's
how?
what the whole fight is. Oh, if you make so and so pay $15 an hour, the business is gonna crumble. Okay, well let's talk about that. If it's a mom and pop pizzeria
Yes, yes,
and they can't afford to pay $15 an hour because they only have 12 employees,
right, right,
let's keep them at 10.
right. But
Jeff Bezos can afford to pay $15
okay,
an
I'll
hour.
go. I'll go with that.
So this is my thing. That's why I'm like minimum wage on a sliding scale.
So would that be your second
That'll be my second
platform?
platform.
Okay, so make the rich
Pay
people
their
pay
fair
their fair share.
You
and
paying $0 is not.
not
That's
gonna
not. You're not a
fly.
patriot.
Right.
If you even agree to pay $0 in taxes, you're not a patriot.
I'll go with that.
You
And
know,
then you would do
right.
sliding
Scale,
I think it's
minimum
brilliant.
wage.
I haven't heard any candidate
I haven't
say
heard any.
that.
Nobody's as smart as me.
There you go. So what would be
Sliding
the third
wage,
one?
minimum wage, because some people might legitimately not be able to afford $15 an hour. You know,
I get it, and that
Um,
would kill those small businesses. I
that would
get it.
kill the small businesses. And the third thing would be to help entrepreneurs get business loans. It shouldn't
Okay.
be as hard as it. It's easier for you to get a car loan than it is to get a business loan.
Uh-huh.
A car is a decrease that's decreasing value.
Right.
Your business loan could possibly help you, become your own entrepreneur and then hire other people underneath you. So I think that this country makes it too difficult to get business loans.
What do you think they need to have as a collateral or something? I mean,
Yes,
if I was
something
a
as a
bank,
collateral.
if I was a
Okay.
bank, I remember when I came to America, I didn't have any money, and
Mm.
I,
Well, I think a property in their name.
if they have it,
Yes.
if they have
So
it,
if you have a condo in your name, a home in your name,
then
will make it easier for
yeah,
you to get a business loan.
absolutely. But a lot of those people might not have it.
Right.
So it's like, how do you, as
Well,
a bank, how do you do that?
there's got to be some, so like you said, some sort of collateral that's of appreciating value.
Yes.
It can't be your car because every
Right.
year it
Right.
gets worth less and less.
Right.
But I think that if you knew that owning something could make it easier for you to get a business loan you have been getting, kept out of, then I think more people would be incentivized to own
I would vote
because it
for
shows
you.
a certain amount of responsibility when you own stuff.
Yes, totally. And
You
we
know,
need to get
yeah,
each person becomes responsible for
yeah,
themselves
right,
and not rely on the government, which is scary to me because the more we rely on it, the more. Why would you want somebody who runs DNV
mhm.
run your medical system? I mean, think about that. It
Right,
just it
right,
makes no sense.
right,
But because it becomes the popular opinion and a mass mentality,
right.
all of a sudden it could go that way. And I'm hoping that we have plenty of time to tune this instrument
Hmm.
and make America into something that we're all very proud of.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. And I'm optimistic that at some point we will right this ship, but we have to come together and not fight each other. Because what happens is the middle class and the poor fighting and the rich running off with the money.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know?
It's not good.
Yeah, we got to
It's
keep
not
our
good.
eyes on the ball.
But I would vote for you if
Thank
you would to implement those
you.
3 points. I think they're very valid, and I thank you greatly for being my guest. And I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you for having me, Yakov.
Thank you.
This
Thank
is
you.
great. Thank
Thank you.
you.